how do you see your customers' needs changing over the, obviously we've been through probably the biggest seismic shift in working practice, in the last 18 months, but how are their needs changing for a solution like the combined ISM and BeamUP system to compare to, say, 5 years ago, or where do you think they will want to go in the future?
End users need to ensure that their operations are running as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And as you say, the pandemic has driven that home, and how floor space is valued, how it's utilized is going to be paramount. So that's one area. Obviously you've got health and safety, you've got hygiene, there's so many more different things that are going to come in. And also end users, their traditional businesses have also got to adapt. And therefore with those adaptations and changes to how they generate their revenues, that's going to throw new obstacles to them, which we're going to have to help them overcome. So across all the verticals that we're talking to, they are recognizing that they have new challenges. And it comes back to what we said earlier. This is not about creating a box of technology and taking it and showing it to people and saying, this is what it does, what problem will it solve for you? What we're about is capturing all of this data and talking to the end user and saying, okay, how can we manipulate this and present it to a form that is of value to your organization and operation?
I think historically over the last few years, challenges always keep moving, but when you bought a system, you bought a camera system, you bought access control, it didn't solve any business problem. It gave you video footage, let you open closed doors, fire detection, suppression, whatever, but nobody really looked at the business challenges and understand what they are and how to solve them. And not just solve them today, be able to dynamically solve them in the future. So provide a platform that today it's a COVID challenges, next year is going to be different challenges, and the system adapt itself. It provides data and actionable intelligence to whatever you are to do, based on the sensor that you install. It's a camera, it's a access, whatever the sensor are, but it's a solution you give to your customers that enable them to really, really adapt to now and the future and manage their facility and be more efficient in what they do.
Yeah, I think just to elaborate a bit on what Ellie said is that I do think that there's increased recognition amongst end users, that security systems have capabilities far beyond pure security applications, and they capture a tremendous amount of data. But capturing data and using that data in a practical way, whether it's with analytics or with AI, has certain prerequisites that don't exist today. And I think that's part of the problem that we're trying to solve at BeamUP, working with ISM and Genesis platform, is how do you structure data? So if you want to feed data to a deep learning model, the cleaner the data is, the more structured it is, in terms of how objects are classified, what the schema is, how things are numbered, much more value you could derive out of it. To use an example, if you wanted to run analytics on accounting in an enterprise organization, and each office within that organization used different codes for expense reports and called suppliers by different names, and then different charts of accounts. And then you feed this into a system and try and ascertain patterns, it's nearly impossible or something very challenging. Because at BeamUP we're generating the design with a computer, by definition, everything's structured according to a common schema. And that's really unlocking the potential of data. The other thing that we're doing with data is adding context to it. And as Ian mentioned, it's the context that really provides value to end users in terms of business intelligence. And to use another analogy, if you go to the doctor and he measures your temperature, that on its own means probably nothing to him. You could have the flu, you could be gravely ill. How does someone assess what the reality is through the context of your medical history, through other tests, what your family's medical history is. That's how you could start to really understand what a situation is. And with the security system, today a lot of end users don't even know where cameras or readers are located, which models do they have, what is the application of these devices. We're trying to add this context so that I have this camera, it's identifying faces above a service elevator door. This room is adjacent to these other rooms and has this connectivity to pass within the building. Once you add this level of context and saying that this facility has a certain security threat, where it's located, what floor are you on, then the power of deep learning is amplified exponentially. And then you could go far beyond the AI applications that exist in the industry today, which are very narrow. It's looking at an image and trying to classify, is this a person, is it a dog? That's a relatively narrow scope looking just through the lens of the camera. You could expand that across the entire organization. Once you contextualize data, you could move beyond a reactive security system and add a lot of value to an organization. Not looking back on old footage to see what happened, but being able to predict where the next security breach will be. Looking across at your network of devices and seeing which devices are failing and in which specific applications, whether it makes sense to have them on a maintenance contract or not, whether it makes sense to replace them or not at a given point in time. And in terms of business intelligence, having a much more granular understanding, as Ian mentioned before, of how people move through a building, what the use and occupancy of different spaces are at different times of the day in different geographies, really enriching the data that's of critical importance to the modern enterprise.
So there's obviously, the combination of both your platforms creates a huge amount of data. How do you keep that data safe? Cybersecurity is a big threat at the minute. There's, I think in the UK we've seen an exponential rise, particularly during lockdown. How would you sort of respond to a client that is worried about, where all that data from his business sits?
So all of the BeamUP data sits on the cloud. I think there's no avoiding that all of our data is moving to the cloud. And I think the critical thing is to ensure industry best practices to encrypt data, to safeguard data, and to protect client data privacy as well. BeamUP is recently ISO certified for cloud security, having the most stringent security measures in the industry implemented to safeguard our clients' data.
I do want to add that, essentially we're collecting data from the site, right? If it's camera or access control, fire, whatever it is. And the data storage is done by the customer, by the video footage. We don't do it. What we use contextual understanding of what's in this data. So we don't really collect any new data that doesn't exist and isn't protected by the video vendor or the access control vendor. So we're just making a lot of sense out of this data. So we really don't have any unique data here. Okay. We have unique insight, but that's not data.
And Genesis, as the on-site platform, that can be on-premise, it can be in the client's virtual world, or it can be on cloud, so that's the choice. It's also CPNI approved and certified under the government cyber scheme, so it's got a government approval for deployment through government facilities. So that's a certificate of trust that's quite unique, and we're very proud to hold that.
Yeah, brilliant.